Hey guys, my name is Tom, and welcome back to another devlog. In this one, I'll finish moving my server into a Unity project, I'll clean up several unfinished mechanics, and I'm going to revamp the terrain generation system. We're starting this devlog off quite a bit later in the week than usual because the last few days have been rather uneventful. By Monday evening, I had almost all the server-side mechanics working in Unity. The one major problem was the player controller. Previously, I was using Beppu Physics' built-in character controller, but Unity's built-in one doesn't work with forces, and I'm not sure I want to implement those manually. On top of that, it's a bit of a black box. I have no idea how it works internally, which makes modifying it to fit my needs a bit more difficult. Since I'll have to deal with players swimming and floating in the water, being nailed by cannonballs, and being slapped around by monsters, I figured it's probably worth it to put in a bit of extra work up front and build a custom controller that uses a rigid body. And that's what I've been working on over the last couple days. I actually started a separate test project so that I don't need to connect to the server every time, and so that my server rollback system doesn't interfere. I've got a relatively decent controller working now, so I think I'm going to clean it up a bit and then transfer it to the server project. It's a few hours later now, and the player controller is not working as I'd hoped. Although it works fine in my test project, it definitely does not work fine on the server. I'm assuming that my rollback system is interfering in some way, but I'm not quite sure how. I've been trying to figure that out for quite a while without any luck, although I did notice that when using forces to move the player, the movement does appear to work. Since the movement while the player is grounded seems to be the problem, I'm starting to wonder if there's extra state involved with the rigidbody.movePosition method, which I should be storing and rewinding. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find anything about this online, so I might just need to go back to using forces for all player movement. That's what I had tried initially. I was applying forces with the velocity change force mode since that produces nice crisp controls, but it cancels out any velocity that the player has from standing on a moving object. Basically, when using the velocity change force mode, the player wouldn't move with the ship. If the boat started sailing away, the player would get pinned to the back wall, which is obviously a problem. But of course, using other force modes also causes problems. The movement is way too floaty. The player takes a while to accelerate to the intended speed, and once you let go of the movement keys, it has to decelerate again. This feels really unresponsive and just all around terrible, even without network latency in the mix, so I need to come up with some sort of solution, assuming there even is one. This whole process has been quite annoying. Every time I think I've got something that works decently, I realize that I made a wrong assumption and that there's potentially a much better way of doing it. And then of course there's the fact that my rollback system doesn't seem to like my latest attempt. So it's nearly 8 o'clock on Monday evening now, and yesterday I managed to get the rigid body based player controller working. The main problem was incorporating the ship's velocity into the movement calculations when the player was standing on it. I wanted to avoid using get component every tick to grab the rigid body of whatever the player was standing on, because doing that for every player in the game wouldn't be ideal. Luckily for me, colliders actually have an attached rigid body property, which I was completely unaware of. I wish I had found out about this sooner. I'm now using a physics.overlap sphere call to find any rigid bodies that the player might be standing on, and if there is one, I simply grab any attached rigid body. From there I can use the supporting body's velocity in my player movement calculations. It's such a clean and simple solution compared to something nasty like making the player a child of the ship when he's standing on it, which is what's suggested in most answers to the many questions about moving platforms that are out there. With that sorted out, I continued re-implementing mechanics which weren't working in the Unity server yet. I still need to make ladders functional again, and I'll probably run into some other things which I overlooked, but the bulk of it is done now. There's also quite a few features which I've left half unfinished over the previous weeks. The anchor can be dropped but not raised, ships can be damaged but you can't see the holes, those sorts of things. Since we're already in week 2 of this devlog, I think I'll try and take care of as many of those as possible instead of jumping into something like client prediction, which will probably take more than a few days to get working. However, since I've already been cleaning up mechanics all day and I want to include something more interesting in this devlog, I think I'm going to work on some better island generation. This is something I've been thinking about for quite a while now, and I'm pretty sure I've come up with a way of procedurally generating much nicer islands than what we have now. It's about 1 PM now, and I've put together some island generation code, which I'm pretty happy with. That being said, this is all still client-side right now, so the server's terrain colliders currently don't match what clients see, which is what I'm going to take care of next. I also need to make the islands themselves generate randomly, and I'd like to try and decrease the height of waves in shallow water. I'm hoping I can get that all done today, which would leave me with the rest of this week to keep cleaning up unfinished mechanics. Several hours later, and the server's colliders match what clients see. I spent a lot more time messing around with the terrain generation code, but I decided to leave random island generation for the future. This is because I don't want the server to load up an entire map's worth of island colliders when really the only ones that need to be loaded are those that are within a certain range of players, so I'm going to come back to this once I have some sort of area of interest system set up. The same goes for decreasing the wave height around islands. I don't want to have to calculate the distance from a given point in the world to the nearest island, which I'd need to do anytime I want to apply a buoyancy force. Looping through all the islands and calculating how far away they are 6 times per ship every single tick probably wouldn't be very efficient. This means that for now I've just manually placed the islands, so fully procedural island generation and decreased wave height will need to wait a bit longer. Yesterday I increased the poly counts for islands, so the terrain is now a lot more detailed, and I changed the way the terrain is colored so that the different colors fade into each other a bit more. I think this is an improvement, as the edges between different colors were previously very sharp, but I'd love to get some other opinions, so let me know what you think in the comments below. Additionally, I re-implemented ladders, which means you can once again climb up to the crow's nest. The only problem right now is that once you reach the top, you just fall straight back down. I did actually set it up so the ladder is supposed to place you at the exit point when you get off, which I've positioned in the crow's nest, but I think my rollback system is overwriting that. Speaking of the server's rollback system, I've come to realize that I overcomplicated the whole thing. Currently, every input packet that a client sends contains the tick which the client is on, which allows the server to calculate how old that input is. It then rewinds the entire physics simulation to the time when that input occurred and resimulates up to the present, this time accounting for the input. Doing this effectively removes the advantage that players with lower latencies have over others, which is especially important in situations where 2 players shoot each other at the same time. However, it's really not necessary to roll back the entire simulation every time an input is received. Instead, I could just have the server process movement inputs as they come in, and only roll back the simulation when a time-sensitive input is received. For example, if a player wants to shoot, the server would just roll back to the time at which the shoot input was sent, spawn the bullet, and then instead of resimulating everything back to the present, we simply jump there. To ensure that the bullet doesn't fall behind everything else due to the jump in time, I can manually calculate how far it would have traveled since being spawned and then teleport it appropriately. A simple raycast should be enough to ensure that the bullet isn't teleported through any walls. Doing things this way might still result in some inaccuracies, but they should be small and very hard to notice. In exchange, the server won't have to resimulate several ticks worth of physics time steps every single tick, which will save a lot of CPU usage, especially as the simulation grows. That being said, I'm not going to start reworking my lag compensation system this week. I want to keep cleaning up a few more mechanics, and then I'll tackle this in the next devlog. I might even be able to do that and get client prediction done in the same video. It's nearly 8 o'clock now, and I've just finished making it possible to raise the anchor. This ship mechanics card on my Trello board has been in the in-progress state for quite a while now, so it feels really good to finally mark it as done. For those of you who didn't know, I have a Trello board which I try to keep as up to date as possible with what I'm currently working on and with what's coming next. There's a link to it in every devlog's description in case you ever want to check it out. Anyways, I was going to make ship holes visible next, but I actually just found out that decals aren't supported in the universal render pipeline at this point in time. I was planning to just take a texture that looks somewhat like a hole and project it onto the hull of the ship, but it seems like that isn't really an option. There's a few more things I want to clean up, but I also want to get a head start on editing to give myself some time this weekend to turn the networking solution into a bit more of an out-of-the-box library, so I think that's going to be it for this devlog. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to give the like button a good slapping for me, and let me know what you think about the new island generation in the comments. In the next devlog, I'll rebuild the rollback system and hopefully implement client prediction in its entirety, so if you'd like to join me on this development journey, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to ensure that you never miss a video. With that said, thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again next time.